They posted me up near Thiepval in late autumn, when the leaves were black with rot and the sky held its breath. The war had slowed, they're not stopped, just paused. The front line, a few miles east, quiet save for the occasional pop and whimper of distant shells. They called it a listening station, though there wasn't much to listen to anymore. No chatter, no advance, just static, wind, and the scuttle of rats bold enough to walk across your boots. The hut was a timber thing, half sunk in the clay. 2 rooms, one for the gear, one for me. An old Marconi Type 16 set hummed gently in the corner, like a sleeping dog. They gave me a cot, a kettle, and 3 weeks of tinned stew. I asked why I'd been sent alone. The sergeant just looked at the ground and said, "Quietest post we've got. You'll sleep easy here." I didn't. The first few nights, I chalked it up to nerves. You get used to noise at the front. The scream of a shell, the click of boots outside your dugout, the cough of the man beside you who hasn't stopped coughing since Ypres. But out there, it was the stillness that kept me awake. Like the land itself had gone dumb. You start to hear things in that kind of silence, not sounds, memories. Boots squelching in old mud. The tick of a wristwatch you buried with someone else. My ears would catch Morse even when the radio was dead. Just a flicker in the skull, like a sound, remembered more than heard. On the 7th night, I woke before dawn. Not from a dream. I don't remember sleeping at all, but I was sat upright, boots laced, coat on. The radio light was off. No messages had come through, but still, my hand was poised over the key, like someone had just stopped speaking to me. There was nothing on the line. Nothing at all. I tapped a few queries back to base, routine, just to hear myself work. But the return line stayed mute. The equipment was fine. I'd checked it twice that day, but even the static had gone soft. Still, that was the word again. Still like the sky before thunder. That morning, while making tea, I noticed something carved into the frame of the station door. A line of dashes and dots, half sanded down by weather. Morse, clear as anything, but older than the war itself by the look of the wood. I rubbed it with my thumb. The grain pulled back like skin. I didn't translate it then. Didn't want to know. Not yet. The next day, I reported the silence to HQ. They promised to send a runner to check the lines. That was 3 days ago. No one came. The runner never came. By the 5th day, I stopped expecting boots in the mud or a knock at the hatch. Maybe they forgot me. Maybe someone back at HQ ticked the wrong box and marked the station as cleared. That sort of thing happened more than you'd think. Men vanished all the time. Most into craters, some into paper. I kept the log, still tapped morning and evening queries across the wire, listening for an answer that never came. The silence on the line turned from stillness to wait, like something leaning close, just beyond the reach of hearing. The hut smelled of old wood, paraffin, and damp. I began to notice things, little shifts in the atmosphere. The floorboards creaked a half beat out of time when I walked. The tea kettle cooled quicker than it should have. Some nights, I'd light the lantern and see my breath, even though the fire was going strong. The shadows in the corners held just a shade too long. On the 8th night, the earth moved. It was subtle at first, just a sound, a low drag, like something heavy shifting below the floor. Thought it was trench rats, at first, maybe a boar. But the soil around the post was packed too tight for burrowers. And the sound, God help me, the sound came from inside the walls. Not scratching, dragging, wet. I slept with my boots on that. Night come morning, I inspected the perimeter. Mud to the east had shifted, sagged in a way that didn't match the rainfall. There were impressions in the clay. Not prints, exactly. Just a long, narrow furrow, like someone had pulled a sack through the trench by one end. Whatever made it had gone in a slow, lazy curve toward the tree line. I followed it until it disappeared into brambles. Didn't go farther. Didn't want to. Back in the hut, the static had returned. Not the crackle of a clear line, nor the hiss of a dead one. This was rhythmic, like someone tapping faintly in the next room. I leaned in, heart pacing like a drill, and held the headset to my ear. Dots, dashes, but too slow. Not quite Morse, not intentional, more like breathing. It stopped when I unplugged the receiver. That evening, I finally carved down the old Morse. Etched into the doorframe. SOMETHINGUNDER. Just that. No name. No plea. No ending. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the transmitter with the lantern burning low, jotting idle phrases into the log just to stay awake. My voice whispered from the back of my thoughts. You should send something back. It's lonely, that thing. It remembers the voices it heard when the earth was red. My hands trembled as I keyed nonsense into the radio. From letters I never posted, hymns my mother sang, fragments of the Lord's Prayer. It felt wrong. Not like praying, but like feeding something. And when I stopped, the earth shifted again. It wasn't sound, this time. It was pressure, as if something beneath the floor had rolled over in its sleep. I stopped marking the days. The ration tins all looked the same after a while, grease-caked and grey, and the little wristwatch they issued had frozen sometime in the night, just stopped ticking. I wound it, tapped it. Nothing. Still, I kept the watch. Sometimes I'd sit and listen to the silence inside it, trying to convince myself it hadn't stopped at all, just fallen quiet like everything else. I began keeping time by the lantern. How long the oil lasted. How long I could hold. My eyes opened before the shadows crept too close. Sleep was no comfort. The dreams weren't mine. A woman in a black veil, weeping beside a tree that had no leaves. A voice on the wind, tapping the same word again and again. Return, return, return. And sometimes I saw them, not in dreams, dash outside, shapes in the tree line, just past the hut, standing still, watching Dot, always the same distance away, always when the fog came low, never moving until they were gone. One morning I awoke, though I don't remember. Sleeping on, the door to the hut was ajar. No wind that night, no draft, just open. The trail of disturbed mud that had led into the woods now led back toward the post, up to the threshold, then vanished. I didn't go outside that day. I didn't light the fire. I sat by the radio, headset in hand, waiting for the breathing to return. Instead, I heard words faint, like breath pressed through rotted cloth. Just a few at first, then a sentence, then a name, not mine. Private Ellis, 4th Battalion, report, report. Ellis had died 6 months before. Artillery outside lens, buried in a shell hole. I remember because I helped drag what was left of him back to the trench. But it was his voice, I swear it, clipped and clear and cold as the dead. Private Ellis. REPORTING, sir. Perimeter intact. No movement. Listening post secured. Awaiting further, static, then silence, then something else, softer than breath. Why did you leave me? I tore the headset off and threw it into the corner. It hissed from the floor like a coiled thing. That night, I didn't speak, didn't write. Just sat in the dark with my coat wrapped around me, listening to the wind slide under the door. It didn't sound like wind anymore. It sounded like weeping. The next morning, I found new scratches inside the station door. More Morse. Fresh dot, not carved, dot burned, dot. I copied them carefully, translated them on the paper ration wrapper. WAKEUPYOUARENOTALONE. I stared at the message for a long while. The letters trembled on the page, as if they were still being written. That was the moment I realized something. I hadn't written in the logbook for days. Pages had been filled, lines upon lines of letters, whole passages not in my hand, neat, tight, military, cold dot reports from men I knew were dead. One had signed his name, Corporal M. Lowry, killed in 1916 during the first push at the Somme. I knew because I saw the chaplain pull his tags myself. Yet here it was, a message dated 2 days ago. Night, quiet, fog rising. Presence felt near wire, recommending cessation of signal activity. It listens when we listen. It listens when we listen. That line hasn't left my mind since. There's something in the wires, not a ghost, not a man, something older, something that waits to be heard, and I fear I've been hearing it longer than I know. I stopped using the transmitter. No more taps, no more queries, no more listening, but it didn't matter. It came through anyway. The voices didn't need the wire anymore. They found me in sleep, in silence, in the spaces between thoughts. When I breathed too slow, when I blinked too long, that's when I heard them clearest. Names whispered through the soil like breath through gauze. Coordinates to places that didn't exist. Messages meant for no one. Orders given in languages that hadn't been spoken since the world was young. The ground around the hut had changed. I don't know when. The mud grew darker, slick with a wet that never dried. I found marks deep, sunken rings like the bracing of an artillery cradle, but too wide, too heavy. Whatever made them wasn't meant to walk, and underneath, always, the same long scar through the trench path, a furrow, as if something dragged its belly through the clay dot. It circled the post now, not once, not twice, endlessly. I kept the lantern lit, even in the day. The shadows moved too freely when I didn't. They reached up the walls in ways the sun never allowed, made shapes against the timbers that didn't match mine. One evening, though I don't know what evening means anymore, stepped outside. The trees were gone, just fog and wire and the hollow shape of the land stretching into forever. No birds, no shellfire, not even the wind. I turned back to the hut, and the door was open, not swinging, open inside. The headset was on. I hadn't touched it, and I heard her voice, clear as a bell rung deep beneath the sea. My sister, dead these 3 years of fever. She was 15. "Come home, Alfie," she said. I dropped to my knees, not in grief, not in awe, in terror, because it wasn't her voice anymore, not quite. The shape of it was hers, yes, but something inside had twisted it, like breath passed through waterlogged lungs, like something that didn't understand speech trying to speak. I should have run, but there was nowhere left to run to. The fog pressed against the door like hands, and then Nit came through, not with shape, not with form, It was not a man, not a ghost, not a shadow. It was the memory of something enormous. A pressure, like the whole weight of the war, suddenly turned and looked at me. The air thinned, my breath shuddered in my chest, and inside my skull, not my ears, I heard it. You called, you called, you called. It didn't speak like we speak. Its voice was signal. Tapped, echoed, threaded through my bones like static through an old wire. So many voices, so many tunnels, so many left beneath. I felt the weight of all the dead men behind me, the ones who died face down in earth, too wet for graves, the ones who choked on gas with no one to hold their hand, the ones buried in communication lines, still tapped after their lungs were gone. And in that moment, I understood what it was. It had grown in the war, not born but awoken, fed by the hum of 1,000 transmitters, by the blood in the mud, by the final thoughts of men with wires pressed at their ears. It was not a thing. It was what listened, and it wanted me to listen to. Stay, speak, join the line. It showed me the truth, not with images, but with memory. I saw the other operators before me, their fingers blue and stiff, still keying messages into radios long disconnected. Skeletons in signal tents, bones, buried in damp wood and copper, still tapping, still listening. I felt my hand drift toward the headset, felt the coil of the wire like a noose. I almost put it on. I almost said yes. I didn't put the headset on. Not that night. I don't remember what stopped me. A fragment of prayer, maybe, or a trick of the firelight on my father's photograph, tucked beneath my kit. But I left it there, hissing on the desk. The voice faded as I backed into the far corner of the hut, pressing my palms to my ears like a child hiding from thunder. Still, I heard it. Always. I heard it. The next morning, the fog had lifted. The trees returned. The door held fast. And in the clearing beyond the trench, I saw finally another man, a uniform British rifle slung across his back. I shouted. He didn't answer, just stood there, half in shadow, as if he couldn't decide whether to step forward or disappear. I ran to him, or tried, but the moment I crossed the trench's edge, the earth swallowed my boots. I looked down. The ground was dry, no mud, no water, but still pulled, as if the very soil had memory, and it remembered me. I clawed my way free, crawled back into the hut. When I looked up, the man was gone. I never saw another soul again, until today, this morning. If it was morning, the signal changed. No more voices, no more taps, just a soft, steady tone, a heartbeat across the wire. I tapped back once, and it stopped. Then came a single line of Morse, clean, sharp, intentional. I copied it down, hands shaking. Operator recognized. Orders received. Welcome home. I burned the message, but it didn't matter. The words stayed in my head, clear as a bugle call. Welcome home. I don't think they'll come for me. I don't believe anyone even remembers. This post exists. In the logbook, I've counted 27 entries in hands that aren't mine. I've begun writing my own beside them, not as a warning. Warnings don't work here. The thing in the wires doesn't trick you. It waits. It lets you bring yourself, and eventually you do. A month ago, maybe more, a shell must have landed. Somewhere near the earth trembled for half a minute, enough to knock the oil lamp off its nail. When the ground settled, the lamp was broken, and beneath the floorboards, I saw them, fingers sticking up through the clay-like roots. Dozens, some black with rot, some clean as porcelain, all reaching. No one believes me, I know. But if anyone reads this, if this station is ever found again, burn it. Don't repair the wires. Don't test the signal. Don't sit down and listen, because it's still there. It's always been there. And when the war ends, it won't. They found me 3 days after the armistice, or so they said. I don't remember much of it. Mud in my ears, blood on my teeth, hands still wrapped around the receiver. They said I'd been out there alone for 46 days. I told them it had only been 12. The man who debriefed me, Captain Hapers, Royal Engineers, looked at the hut once and went pale, refused to step inside, said the air felt wrong, thick, electric. They had the station pulled down, but they never buried it. They just left the clearing as it was, marked the coordinates and sealed the report. Operator survived. Station compromised. Communications inconclusive. That's all the file said. I've lived a quiet life since. Coastal village, no telephones, no radios, not even a clock that ticks, but sometimes, when the wind is just right, I still hear it, the signal calling through the mist.